It's gonna be a good one.
It's gonna be a good one.
Definitely a different type of process.
Cut down or freeze up.
Being a coach's son.
Jackson, of course, they keep retooling. One stolen base, a hit by pitch. Oh my goodness. Hello everyone, welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for this edition of YBMcast, powered by Game 7 Baseball, Game7Baseball.com. We're in full swing, got it rolling. Our Super 7, we're going to be out with these particular tournaments. We got the Spring Showdown to kick it off out at the WAC. We'll be out at the 42 Classic this year at Edwardsville, Illinois. We're bringing it back home. Yeah, I think that's the third one in there, if I'm not mistaken, is our Super 7 14U Invitational. Kevin, you're going to like this. We have 23 teams registered for this event, 14U teams. From around the state. We got a few Illinois teams. Got a great mix because we did open. We got just a little over half AA, and then we got the others AAA major. So it's a great mix of teams. Mineral area, we got down from the Southwest, the Central, couple teams for Illinois, the Metro area. So I am very excited about this one because this gives us an opportunity to see the incoming freshmen.
That is awesome. That's fun. You're going to get to see who we're talking about next.
Yes, because I've seen some 2029s here popping up from time to time that show up at your events. And those are 8th graders, correct?
Yeah, I will, over the next couple of weeks, I'll start to get introduced to some of those kids, and especially as we get into the early summer and we start to form our junior future games. This is kind of when it starts up over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're looking forward to that one. I'm hoping to get the one last spot filled. We're hoping to get the Southside Prospects 14U squad in there. We were down yesterday, with Eric Rule and his group, the Southside Prospects. Had a great time yesterday. We've got some stuff coming up this week from there. Enjoyed that. We got a chance to see. It was great because Eric had his 6U team working out there, and
nice.
we had the high school kids working out, and then the 6U came in, and you don't see that contrast very often, but it's really fun. You see the snow cone brigade.
Yes.
And is it time to leave yet brigade?
Yes. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding on the time to leave. No, it's just different. But got to see both those disparities. Hadn't met Coach Rule before, but really great conversation with him. I'd say you're probably familiar. He's a assistant over at Vianney, and does a great job. And Kevin, I didn't even know that facility, Center St. Louis, existed.
It's been around a long time.
Well, see,
they
that's
do a little bit of everything over there. There's volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball, lacrosse, field, everything's on. It's a huge facility, though.
It is. They were in there. Yeah. They got, it's like 100,000 square feet and huge facility. They had volleyball practice going on there last night as well. And yeah, the women's field hockey was coming in right behind us.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was a cool place. Really enjoyed that conversation. Got a chance to talk a little Vianney baseball too, which was fun.
Nice.
I think there'll be, we'll see what happens right there. But, anyway, today, though, I didn't introduce him. Everybody knows he's here, though. The guru himself, Mr. Kevin Moulder, back from traveling around the Southwest. And you said you didn't get to do Springfield this past week.
Yeah, had some sickness issues, not from me, from one of the guys in charge down in that area. So we rescheduled. So it was a last minute switch, and it happens, right? I always save a date for the very end in case of a snow day or something like this comes up. So not the end of the world, you know. Life throws you a curveball, right? You sit on it and drive it into right center field. So what we're doing.
I like that analogy. Exactly. That's it. So, but you were down. I want to start the show talking to you a little bit. You'd sent me some information. I'm looking over here. You were down with the Missouri Bulls. Now, Todd Pennington's group down there, we've been down and talked to them. It's been a few years ago. Enjoyed that conversation. It's one of those, it's in Cape or kind of north of Cape. It's situated where they
Cape.
It
Their
is in
facility
Cape,
is
isn't
in
it?
Cape Girardeau. Yes.
But it just pulls from so many different areas, though. The Missouri Bulls, they pull so many different kids and a lot of small school kids. Correct?
Yes. And we've been going down there for a number of years now, and they've put out a disproportionate amount of kids that have gone on to the future games, and and they didn't disappoint. Noah Johnson would be one, the 6'4" right-hander, and Rylan Mills, who's been with us to the future games, and was down there. He was at the event this past the other week. So, yeah, always good time going down there, and they do draw, and you do get to see a lot of the smaller town kids. Now, there's also some big time. I mean, that's Jackson's right there. So, they got some players from Jackson, et cetera. So it's a little bit of a mix.
Now, Rylan Mills, this is the one that's interesting to me. We brought this up just to Ted on the last show. Oran, and I said it right this time. Oran High School there. They're the defending Class 1 state champs. They've been in the show and the dance for the last quite a few years since we've been going down there. We've seen them a lot in the Final Four.
They're a heavyweight in that class. It'll be interesting to see if they get reclassed here as we start up the spring season, because I would have to imagine they've stacked up some points where they might move up into the Class 2, but we'll see. That's a guessing game, obviously. But either way, they'll be highly competitive whether they're in the 1 or the 2 class.
Yeah, because there's a couple other kids from that school that showed well at this Missouri Bulls event, correct?
Yeah, no, they're always, and that's the thing. They always have, it's one thing for a school to have a player, but they've always produced players and had guys move on and to college baseball, and that's the key to having a good program. So they will be right back in the mix, and have a strong group for this spring.
I got to pull up
quickly on Rylan Mills, and I think I touched on this last time.
Mm-hmm.
He broke our state record for TrackMan on exit velo, and that's counting the college kids that I work out, the JUCO kids, and 110.8, which is insane. And I know we're going to talk about the Super 60 later, but that's higher than anyone there as well. So that is beyond ridiculous, and that is like next level strength and doing it with the bat there by Rylan.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about that here in a minute. I'll get to that. But there's another young man from Oran that stood out. I'm trying to find, maybe it wasn't, I didn't write it down. But Jackson High School was down there, Carter Shipman. That was interesting to me because we thinking how much pitching Jackson's lost, and they lost J.P. Sauer. This was an interesting one for me right here.
Yeah, JP or Carter Shipman is going to be an arm to watch. At the event, he kind of hung out in the mid 80s, but you can tell, this is early. This was a January event. It wouldn't shock me at all if I go down to see Jackson or see Jackson sometime this spring and he's 88 or 89. At a later date, he's an interesting arm that'll be a good follow. This was a good group. Chase Lawson, who is a really slick fielding middle infielder at St. Genevieve. He did a really job. He's put on 20 pounds. Like, he's a kid that I'm sorry, Notre Dame.
Okay.
I apologize. I got my schools mixed up. He's at Notre Dame. And Notre Dame has got a shot to have a pretty nice group this year. But Chase Lawson over at Notre Dame, slick fielding infielder, and he's always had a nice skill set, but has been a little light physically. Like a kid, you can see a kid has a good swing or he has good actions on the infield, but there's just not enough horsepower there to get it all the way done. And now he's put on 20 pounds of muscle and looks really good. And he's just a junior. He's a guy that you can tell is coming on strong here down the stretch of his final couple of years of high school. That was one that stood out. Braden Beers is also an interesting guy. 6'4", righty, out of Festus.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a little juice in the bat, infielder. And Festus is set to be really strong this spring with three, high-end college pitcher type guy, Division I, high D2 pitchers. So that'll be one to keep an eye on because I think Festus is going to be a major factor. I believe that's Class 5.
Class 5.
So that was another one that kind of stood out down there, aside from Ryland, of course, he'd stand out in any event you put him in.
They got a little more experience last year.
And he, by the way, is signed with Southeast Missouri State, so he's choosing to stay home, which is
Ryland Mills.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a Red Hawk.
I think that's cool, man.
Yeah.
There, mom and dad get to watch a lot of the kids. He's a small town kid. He's probably got a lot of support from that. I know, because those Iran fans, they're cool. They're good fans, man. They support that team. And I think that's a huge factor when you're going away. You've been in a small town most of your life. You're going away to a big school because that's Division I, and SEMO is a big school. It's not maybe, Mizzou, but still, it can be a little bit overwhelming for a kid, right?
No, absolutely. And SEMO has a great program. They beat Arkansas in a regional last year. Our guy Brooks Kettering was a star down there during that regional tournament. He's back. I think he's preseason player of the year in that conference. So, yeah, Southeast Missouri has things rolling down there baseball-wise, and they have a good fan base. They'll get a good turnout. They'll get 1,500 out when it warms up, and Capitol Park's a great place to play baseball and a good place for college baseball and high school baseball. They do a good job. That's really a community field down there. They do a SEMO ball tournament with the high school teams in the spring, and all the bigger area teams they'll play a tournament, and the finals are down there. So it's a good setup.
There's speaking of Cape Central, young man, Caden Chenoweth.
Yes.
He showed very well.
Yeah, he had a good event. That was another one that performed well. Outfield pitcher. He's got some juice in the bat, and Cape Central has some pieces. Jathan Spain was a future gamer, and so he'll have a running mate there with Caden Chenoweth. So.
There you go. There's a couple of younger guys that stood out in this. Scott Lowry from Scott City, Class 3 D2 And Scott City was 29-4 last year. They got upset in the district final, but 2027, just a sophomore. When these small schools, you get a sophomore at this, he can make an impact for a school like that.
Yeah, he's a pretty good athlete. He's a long rangy 6'2" shortstop, and has some juice in the bat. As a junior, and kind of being wiry strong to be in the low 90s already in exit velo, and has some athleticism. That's going to be an interesting one. You can see why they had the success they did when you got athletes like that, especially at the smaller school.
Absolutely. There's a freshman, 2028 for Oran that showed up there, Rowan Roberts.
Yep.
What'd you think about him, Kevin?
Rowan also does a good job, catcher, pitcher, and obviously Ryland's a catcher, but Ryland will pitch a little bit this year. And when you're talking about a Class 1 school, there's a kid that'll have a pretty good chance to be a player of some variety on the varsity team. Now, he might not be the star player, but when you got a Class 1 or 2 school, you need your younger guys that are capable. Not many teams at that level have a guy that's a good backup catcher. And he's going to be a starting catcher, and a good one when he's a sophomore, junior, and senior. If Ryland won there, he might be the starting catcher, but he is there. So that gives them a huge advantage on the other schools that they're playing against. They got not just one, but 2 capable catchers, which is hard enough in Class 6, let alone Class 1. So that's one thing you see at the smaller schools. You really need to find roles for your freshmen and sophomores if you're going to have a good varsity team, because it's not easy for them to find 13, 14 contributors, which is what it'll take to put together a state championship caliber run.
Yeah. So I want to look at one player in particular down from the Southwest. I know you have to reschedule your Springfield deal, but I'm excited about this. And as we were talking about catchers, I think it's interesting. This is the one hole for this team, but this young man has shown pretty well, and that is Jackson Gamble for Nixa, and a Missouri Southern commit. This kid, he seems to have just gotten better, and you see these guys, oh man, he hit 91, he hit 92, he hit 95, but they pitch in the upper 80s range. This guy actually pitches in the low 90 range, doesn't he?
Yeah, Jackson he's taken a velocity, he's had a velocity jump here recently. He's a big kid, and people may wonder, why do pro scouts or high level colleges make a big deal about a pitcher's size? And this isn't always the case, but the general rule is those bigger guys can often hold their velocity. They don't have to work as hard to throw as hard. Jackson's a big boy. He's 6'4", 215, and he has had a velocity spike. And yeah, he can run it up 90, 91, and he's going to be in that 88 to 91 range in game. And that's the Nixa has. We've talked about a lot of their talent, Wyatt Vincent and Caden Cloud, but they got a true number one, which makes them extremely dangerous, because it's one thing to have a good team, but then when you have an ace on top of it, that can give you kind of a trump card when you're playing these postseason games. That sets you apart from some of the other high quality teams.
And the reason we bring this up and we wanted to talk about this is the Super 60 just happened, and Jackson Gamble is sitting there number one at Nixa. But there's 2 kids out of the Southwest in the state of Missouri there's 3, but we're going to start with these 2 just right there from Springfield area that were at the Super 60. And That is Caden Cloud and Sebastian Norman. These two performed very well as well, correct?
Yeah, I'd love. Yeah, we had our Super 60, which is our Super Bowl, our national major event that we have during the winter, and we had three players from Missouri. In kind of an interesting year, all of our players that we selected to go to the Super 60 didn't. None of them came from the major cities, so we didn't have a Kansas City player or St. Louis player. And our top ranked guy, Jordan Martin, was at our All American games, but he's busy scoring 35 points a night in basketball right now, so he wasn't going to be ready to go. We had Caden Cloud from Nixa, Sebastian Norman from Glendale, and left-handed pitcher Ethan Rogers from Lone Jack. So it's always our goals to cover up the whole state, and this year, in particular, the southwest part of the state has some real talent that's going to attract pro attention. Now, these guys did a phenomenal job representing the state, and I'll just kind of go through some of it. Start with Caden Cloud. He's senior infielder, shortstop, heading to Kentucky. He performed really, really well across the board. In an event like this, he does above average at every single category. And when I say above average, I'm talking among the elite guys. I'm talking about the guys that are there. Above average for the guys at the Super 60. Not, it's elite when you put them on a high school baseball field in Missouri or really anywhere, right? He's a standout. But he's above the cut when you put him in a top level event. He ran a 6.7. He's thrown 86 across the diamond. Took a great round of BP. Was tons of balls in the 100 mile per hour range off the bat. Topped out at 102. He was one of the top performers in our athletic testing, which we do jumping, a vertical, and then an RSI jump, which is multiple jump sequencing. And in the multiple jump sequencing, he was one of the top performers there, which just, it doesn't necessarily make you a good baseball player, but it certainly helps. It shows his athleticism. And clearly we knew that he was a good athlete. He's a shortstop, and not just that, you can kind of tell, but that kind of gives that some teeth and some verification. So this is one of the things that really sparked for Titus Sissel. He came to the Super 60 and was off the charts. He was the top athletic guy at the Super 60, and then obviously he ended up being a third-round draft pick last year. Now is in fourth round draft pick last year, and propelled him into professional baseball. So this kind of stuff, some organizations look at it more than others, but the athletic testing is becoming a bigger and bigger deal, and teams are getting smart, and they're able to kind of project what a player might be or not be based on some of this athletic testing that we do, or not just us, but we do across the industry.
Let me ask you can I ask you about that real quick? Do you think the athleticism piece is more important now because they believe if they can take an athlete and mold them to, fielding how they want or this or that, if they have some deficiencies in mechanics, they can work through that if they're athletic enough?
Yes, and it also kind of opens up opportunities to play different positions. We kind of had a similar type player back-to-back years get drafted in Missouri with Nazan Zanatello out of CBC and Titus Sissel, obviously from Francis Howell. These guys are natural shortstops. That's where they played in high school a lot of the time. Titus started as a center field, but they're guys that can play all over the field. Nazan is now playing third base in pro ball. Titus is starting as a shortstop. But, you look at a guy like Brennan Donovan, Tommy Edmond, It was a star, with the Cardinals, and then with the Dodgers. They're playing multiple positions, so those type of things, those type of tests are kind of indicators. Yeah, this guy can go play, multiple or potentially play multiple position, or has the athleticism to do that.
Gotcha. That's always interesting to me. When you're talking about Sebastian Norman, is he one of those guys as far as athleticism is concerned?
So he fits into a kind of a different category than Caden Cloud. Like Sebastian Norman's probably not an up the middle player, but that's more due to physical stature. He's 6'1", 235. He is the best way to describe him as a freak show from an athletic standpoint. He's 234 pounds and ran a 6'4", 560. He's one of the fastest guys in the country. That's high end speed. That is special stuff there. He's got a big time throwing arm. He's throwing, he worked out at third base and in the outfield. From across the diamond, he was 95 across the infield, which was the top at the Super 60. He was 94 from the outfield. And he was second in exit velo, topping out at 107 miles per hour, which is, we talked about Ryland being 110, and I made a big deal about that because I just don't see it. 107 out of a high school kid is really special. And not to mention, it's one thing to do that, but then to be able to run the 6'4" on top of it, generally, like, hey, you got a guy who can really hit. He might be a little bit slower, more big physical guy, which Sebastian is a big physical guy, but he also, runs like a center fielder or just a track athlete. And then we get down into like some of his other metrics, like his jumping metrics. He was one of the highest vertical jumps at the event. His grip strength was second. So like his forearm strength is incredible, which you might suspect out of someone that can, produce a 107 mile per hour exit velo. And then like we test like the bat, we have metrics on their bat with the blast motion sensors, and he ranked the highest in hand speed. So he led the whole event. So he has the quickest hands at the event. So just the stuff that you can't coach. Like I can, you can develop a good high IQ baseball, player with work and time. This is stuff that's not coachable, which is a lot of the time what the pro scouts look for is the stuff that they can't coach, and they get their hands on these guys and they coach them hard, and then you end up with special big leaguers.
Me, I've told you this before. That's the first thing I look at is hand speed. I like to see how a guy can get through the zone with his hands, because that makes everything else, with his body. If you can do that, you can make up for a few mistakes with quick hands, right?
It gives you margin for error. Now, good hand speed doesn't mean you're a good hitter.
Right.
But
right.
I can't show you a good hitter with poor hand speed either.
Right. And what's curious about Sebastian, and I think to me, when I sit and look at the landscape of baseball and the things that I've seen, this is a young man that, gets that I think is draftable in the sense of, here's a kid, we know we're going to look at him hitting, playing, doing this. Well, if we miss that weight, the kid throws 95. I'll put him on the mound and make him a reliever.
And you see stuff like that, like Kenley Jansen started out as a catcher and he couldn't hit, and now he's one of the better closers that we've seen over the last decade. There's always an out with those type of kids. I brought up Nazan Zanatello earlier. He's also low 90s on the mound with a really good curveball. That's not what they're signing him for,
right.
But that's how special these kids are athletically. And we didn't bring it up, but Sebastian's out of Glendale, and he's signed with Oklahoma State, and it'll be interesting to see what Oklahoma State or what if he gets drafted, what positional fit they find for him in high school. He plays third base. You could see him sticking there. You could see him maybe in one of the outfield spots. So that'll be interesting. And then our third representative from the state of Missouri was one that I'm excited about is left-handed pitcher Ethan Rogers out of Lone Jack. And for those that don't know where Lone Jack is, that's kind of between Warrensburg and Kansas City, which if you don't know where Warrensburg is, that's between Columbia and Kansas City. So kind of, an hour outside of Kansas City to the east a little bit, if you will.
That makes sense for him playing with Yard Baseball Club in the summertime, right?
Yes.
There you go.
And Ethan showed very well as well. Ethan's a left-handed pitcher, probably about 6'1" lefty. He was 91, 93 at the event. Ethan has some really good metrics with some of his pitches. His average fastball spin rate is 2,400 plus, can get up close to 2,500. So, big league average is somewhere around 2,200 to 2,300. And again, high spin rate doesn't make you a good pitcher necessarily, but it can help. It can be an indicator for swings and misses. Generally, these guys will get some higher swing and miss rates. He had the top slider velocity there at 86 miles per hour. So that's getting into what I call big boy territory right there. A lot of times in high school, a normal slider will be, in that 76, 77 range. He's throwing that hard enough now where that's going to fool, Division I hitters, and even, you can get into pro ball with an 86 mile per hour slider. Then he has a curveball too, which he also throws in the low 80s. So those are good indicators, whereas a normal high school pitcher is going to have a low to maybe mid 70s mile per hour curveball. So that's a separator for Ethan.
The big time lefties, when their career now, and Kershaw, I think, did this for the last 7 years with the injuries and all the stuff. He lived off that back foot slider. Got guys out.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, if you got a lefty like that and you can dot that back big toe, I mean, that's a hard pitch to hit, Kevin.
There are some lefties that can do it, but the key really for all of them is, Ethan clearly has the tools. He's already a low 90s guy. He's shown the ability to spin a breaking ball. Now it just comes down to command and consistency. And if he's one of the guys that can command and consistent, he will have a future in baseball, 100%. But that's easier said than done. But he is going to get an opportunity for sure.
I'm watching, as you did this, I brought him up and I'm watching the video they have up on him at the Super 60.
I'm sorry, you brought up a video of who?
Of Ethan Rogers.
Oh, okay.
While you were talking about him, I was watching here. Yeah. And to me, the biggest thing here was not really necessarily watching Ethan, but the setting around him. I mean, it's not like these are all big league scouts. These are all high profile people in this room sitting there staring at you. It's got to be a bit overwhelming for a kid, right? Or
yeah, we had over 100. Yeah, especially for a kid from Lone Jack. Which is another reason this event is great. It gets the exposure, and also is just a good life experience for someone that's about to go through this process. Because now there will be scouts at his game, and it won't be. We had over 100 major league scouts at the event. So now when 4 or 5 pro guys show up to his game this spring, it shouldn't freak him out. He's seen worse. He's been under the lights. So he's had some opportunities, but now he's certainly a known guy. You know, and it's a little bit of a disadvantage. A kid from a town like Lone Jack has to work a little harder or see something, because when you're at um, a CBC, a Francis Howell, a Liberty North, a Staley, a Liberty, it it's a little easier to gain exposure because
Hmm.
you're playing so many good teams and you're bound to play against other good players, and it's real easy to fly into a St. Louis or a Kansas City, which makes it easier for scouts to get to. And they certainly get off the beaten path and go find guys, uh, but they got to know about them, and there's got to be a reason to go. Sometimes they don't need a reason to go to a school that's in their way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. It makes sense. I think this is cool. Now, I want to ask you this because we're talking about the Super 60. This is an interesting question because, and I understand Jordan Martin he was probably invited, but like you said, he's playing basketball and playing very well. You've got the national rankings when people look at these things, and I think this is where sometimes people get confused. This is the Super 60, you think, and if I'm just looking at this from an outside perspective, I'm thinking top 60 players in the country, right? That's an easy thing to think about. But it really isn't. I mean, Ethan is ranked nationally 375, which is no chump change. You think about if you're in the top 400 in the United States of America, that's pretty good still.
It's really good.
Right? So how do these things measure in that respect, Kevin?
So, we've talked about this a couple times on this show, and this is just on a magnified level. The
Mm,
Super 60s there is for identifying professional prospects. So, you can be one of the best players in the country and not necessarily be a professional prospect out of high school. If that makes sense,
it
and it's
does.
really hard to kind of put that together. But certain guys have more pro style tools than others. And then also, a kid like Jordan Martin, like there are certain athletes that are going to be in winter sports, so that they're not available to come. So, yes, and we do invite a couple more. I think we had, usually it's somewhere in the upper 60s, 70 guys top is super 60 um, amount of players there. So, and we also try to diversify the roster. So we try to have a certain amount of left-handed pitchers there, a certain amount of catchers there, uh, you know, shortstop, third base, outfield. So you don't just take a lot of times in the rankings, the shortstops are ranked higher. Sometimes there aren't as many catchers at the top of the list, so you do have to keep that in mind as well with the rankings. Or the Super 60 roster. You're going by top positional ones that also fit a profile of what a high school draft pick might be.
Gotcha. I think I don't think we can say it enough because, somebody might be watching this and not know these things and understand. I think it's always good to give parents as much information about because, hey, why is my kid, well, here you go. And it's
Yeah,
not in a negative. It's just, this is the reality of it. Correct?
it is. Yeah, and like I would point that out about it applies to the national rankings, but it certainly applies to the state rankings, and that's an easier one to kind of look at because when we're talking about it, we know who these kids are, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Missouri players, we have a good idea about me, the general people in Missouri, and really that's not true because the St. Louis people don't necessarily know about Ethan Rogers, for example,
That's
or the
correct.
kids in Springfield or Kansas City. Um, but I'll get some of that. Well, how does my son hits 40 points higher than so and so? How you know you can be a really good high school player, and maybe you're signed at a Division II school, and then and out hit the guy signing in a Division I school.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the indicators on why this is happening? Well, how does he run? How does he field? What type of frame does he have? There's so much. How is his bat speed? What is the athleticism like? Or on the mound, the kid that is 82, 86 with a really good breaking ball that throws a ton of strikes. Sign me up for that kid in high school baseball all day. But that won't translate necessarily in the SEC. So there's a reason, Mizzou isn't jumping on that pitcher, even though he has the best ERA in the state. He might have a sub-1 ERA. And we've seen this before. Even for really good Class 6 schools. This was a while ago. But I've seen that. And then there'll be a kid with a 4 ERA that's 6'5" and 93 and has big time stuff. He just hadn't put everything together yet. And he might be ranked higher than the guy with the sub-1 ERA. And that's just kind of how it works. It's not hey, who do we think is the best high school baseball player, the guy that's going to win the most games in high school? It's where are these guys moving on to? It's a blended approach, if you will.
I don't think you can state that enough personally, because I think it gives people, we try to give perspective to people as much as we possibly can here. And I think that's the best you can do, right?
Yeah, no, and I certainly understand it because, to a casual observer, or even an intense high school baseball fan, I understand. Like, it makes sense. And also people care, and they also care a lot about their kids or the kids in their community. So it makes sense why people,
get passionate
have hard
about
feelings about this. Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, well, a couple years ago, we just saw this. I think Kenton Deverman had the best ERA in the state at a .51.
Yes. Now, Deverman, we had pretty highly regarded, but he wasn't the top-ranked kid. But I think I'd have to go back and look. He was probably 20th or something along those lines, which is really, really good. And now he has gotten a lot better physically. Now he's an upper 80s, low 90s guy and has dominated college baseball. So, which is awesome.
Exactly.
In high school, he dominated in the low 80s.
Yes, he did. And that's the thing. And I think that's that's one of the examples that just pops in my head, in this respect. And when we start looking at these, because I was looking at that, and that's where my mind goes, because I try to look at these things. I know what you talk about and what you do. I try to look at this as that person. I'm the layman. I'm the dude, I'm Joe Schmo sitting here looking at the Super 60 and go, why is that guy there and that guy not there?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I love about this conversation, because I can bring this to bear and it gives people an opportunity, because I look at that. It's interesting to me when you're talking about, like, I think Sebastian Norman is ranked nationally like 107 or something like that. But if, you think about, well, there's 50 states, right? Or something like that. Yeah, I think it's 50. Yeah. Okay. Not good with geography. But, if you just take 2 players out of each state, that's what you got. You got 100 kids.
Yeah, I just did quick math for you on the fly. And let me tell you, like, obviously, not every state is equally represented. So there is, this is just a reality, a large number of players that come out of Southern California that are in our national rankings, in Texas, in Florida, in Georgia. And there's not a ton of players out of North, South Dakota, Montana, and Idaho, in Wyoming. There might be 0 out of that whole region, or there might be 1. Sometimes there's a first rounder a couple years back out of Wyoming. So it can happen, but I can assure you that the majority of the players are going to come from those regions I just mentioned, Southern Cal and uh, Florida, Texas, Georgia, compared to. So yeah, for Missouri to have 3 representatives at the Super 60 is a good deal.
That's what I thought. When I saw 3 names, I was like, that's impressive. I thought it was pretty impressive. And the Super 60, it's not regional, it's national, right? They don't have Super 60s in the West and the Central
No,
and the
yeah,
East.
this is so one of one event. Yes.
So if you're invited, they think you definitely have an opportunity to be looked at that next level.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's kind of tricky about the Super 60, because we are still over a month away from any baseball games here.
Mm-hmm.
Opening day in baseball is happening this week in Florida for high school baseball. Southern Cal, Arizona, Texas. These guys are playing high school baseball much sooner, and then you could extend that further in high school baseball in Minnesota or New York, the state of New York. They don't start playing until April with a lot of the northern ones. So it's a really tricky event to pull off nationwide because if we were running this for Missouri, I might have it 2 weeks later. And if you're running it for Southern California, you might want to do it on, January 20th. And if you were doing it in, Minneapolis, you'd probably want to do it on, the third weekend of March or whatever. So it is tough to pull off and kind of balance the whole country out.
Yeah, that makes sense, Kevin. That makes sense. Because we were just talking about that coming up on the, Brett Graves was talking about, the buildup. How do you build yourself up to be able to do a showcase like that and put yourself in the best possible scenario? And especially, and the timing of your start of your season, are you ramped up? Those types of things. It's all relative, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes.
So, man, thanks a lot. Always. I love that stuff. That's good. So you ready to do your preseason picks?
I'll give you an early spoiler. Nixa will be in our top 10 in Missouri high school ranking. We hit on Caden Cloud and Jackson Gamble. There you go. I'll give one away for you.
Oh my gosh, want to see my shocked face. Oh, it's going to be fun. Hey, we
even top 5.
Oh man, we got a treat coming up too next week. We're going to slide Coach Tim McElligott in from Blue Springs into the show next week, Kevin, and
awesome.
Get a little look at the Blue Springs Wildcats after their championship run. They're going to be a little down, but we'll see what's going on. We're in the middle of getting all of our coaches previews. We got some great ones coming up. I'm very excited about this because we've reached out to a lot of different guys. We've got Coach D'Amelia coming on, Class 4 champs last year at Blair Oaks. We got Coach Struckoff from down at St. Francis Borgia coming on. We're going to be talking with we got Coach DuPont from Lafayette, Coach Draghi. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Is that correct? From Eureka?
Eureka, yeah.
Yeah, he's coming on the show. We're reaching out to a lot of. I know I'm missing some, but we're getting around the state. Coach Meyer from Lee Summit West, because I think they definitely should be in your top 10. Just an FYI.
Well, a good chance.
And so I'm excited about talking to these coaches, seeing what's there. Especially Borgia, when they lost a lot of guys. And it'll be interesting to see, the culture of that program, how they retool, how they reset themselves with Coach Struckoff, because they've been very good for the last few years.
They have.
So anyway, well, that's a little preview of what's coming up there, folks. We got a lot of coaches previews. We're getting ready for the season. We got a great lineup, 40 games of baseball, high school baseball coming up, Kevin. And I think it's going to be pretty exciting across the state.
It's going to be great. Can't wait. You exceeded the Misha game limit by 5. Missouri high school baseball teams are only allowed to play 35 regular seasons. Regular season games. I'm glad you're going above and beyond.
I didn't even think about that, but thank you. Coach Donig, Andrew Donig from Webb City too. Got him coming on already. So I'm looking forward to that one. That'll be interesting. Get down in the far reaches of Southwest Missouri.
Webb City's been good. They had a really good group last year.
Yeah. So that's what's coming, folks. Hey, if you like what we're doing, please hit the subscribe button. I didn't say that earlier. Hit the like. If you like what we're doing, please hit that like. It helps the algorithm. It helps get more people in tune to what we're doing here. We appreciate all the support. And I appreciate all the folks that we've been doing the tour stops the last, like 4 or 5 weeks and being at these facilities and talking to these club teams. It's been exciting, and I've really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate all the support that everybody's given us and everybody watching. We hope you enjoy the content. Guys like Mr. Moulder here that come on and talk about baseball around the state, we appreciate that so greatly. He's in tune with what's happening, and so that's our goal. We want to be the most comprehensive youth baseball talk in the Midwest. And that's what we're shooting for, to continue to grow that. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you very much. Have a great day in the Lord. All you pitchers, give it to him, Kevin.
Keep throwing strikes.
Hitters, hit them where they ain't. We'll see y'all next time.